particularly the star system Sirius, but others too. So this was an area where dynastic people came for thousands of years to make offerings, not to gods, not to a king, but to their ancestors who came from the stars. Next. Here it is in close-up. Now, it's been broken off and damaged, but once this was finally polished, finally smooth, could not be done with copper chisels, all with stone pounders. Again, Chris will address this much more adequately than I. This is this is alabaster, and this is the Hotep, the offering table. Next. Now, in the background, we saw these little structures also made out of alabaster with these interesting gears on them. What is this? These have been moved. They're at this site, but they're not in their original position today. They were moved maybe 50, 60, 70 years ago, and what we call, without being facetious, an Egyptian minute. They were supposed to be on their way to the Cairo Museum, and they still sit there 50, 60 years later. Good, because if they're in the Cairo Museum, they might be in the basement, where you folks couldn't get to see them. I'll talk about the basement before we're done. Next. Here, you can't see it clearly in the slides. We can show it to you in the field. You see circular tool marks. You see polish marks. Where something was polishing the stone with, I believe, ultra-frequency, ultrasonics. Chris can address this better than I again. Something that's vibrating at a very high feed rate to polish these things at a high rate. Not by a copper chisel, by hand, folks. Next. Here he is, Hakim, looking at this. Again, we say, the Egyptologists, what do they say? Well, a German Egyptologist named Ludwig Borchardt said, let me think, what are these used for? Okay, these were sacrificial bowls for animals. And they sacrificed animals here and collected the blood. Why did he say that? Next. Because it has these holes in it. Again, the slide's falling off. It has these holes here, perfectly round, which Christopher can address better than I. Perfectly round with spiral groove marks in it. But Mr. Borchardt, Dr. Borchardt, Professor Borchardt, if this was to gather blood, why shouldn't the hole be at the bottom? Where you think the fluid, every liquid seeks its own level. So if you're trying to gather some type of a solution, wouldn't you have the hole at the bottom where it would run out? Once it's up here and goes past this level, it's useless for gathering any kind of solution. So obviously they're not sacrificial basins for animals. Something else this hole was used for. Next. And here it is again. There's a coin here. The coin shows where the spiral groove marks. Again, the slide does not capture it as well. But perfectly round in this alabaster with spiral groove marks. Chris can address this. And not for... We think something was attached in there. Something was involved. Something was... This was obviously... Hakim speculates... Again, this is speculation. This is not part of his tradition, but he speculates this could have been sort of part of some landing platform for some type of craft, and the exhaust was to go through here, whatever. That's just speculation. We don't know what the holes were used for, but they certainly were not to gather animal blood. Next. Next. Thank you. And here we are to her, and her is the key operative word. You've heard many different stories of the Sphinx. It's Harem Haket. It's Horus in the horizon. It represents a king Khafre making an offering to the sun. Well, according to the indigenous tradition, it's she. Her name is Tefnut. She represents an aspect of the Great Mother, because to the Cometians, the sky was feminine. Female, represented that's which created it, that which is uncreated, called Nut, N-U-T. When Nut wanted to manifest on the earth, on the planet, she spit on the earth. Tefnut means the spittle of Nut, and it was right here at Giza. And according to this tradition, she is the oldest statue on our planet that we know of now. There may be things older, but that her date is 54,000 years. 54,000 years, not 4,500, like Zahir Was will tell you, and not he, like Zahir Was will tell you. That the face has been recarved many times. This is not the original face. But I wrote an article for David's Wex magazine in 1995 where I speculated the face as it is today is that of a black African woman's face. She was the mother of the first king of the first dynasty, whose name was Hor-Aha or Men-Aha. The Greeks called Menes. And to honor his mother, he had the face of the Sphinx recarved to her face. It's not a man's face to any degree. Anybody will take you to Egypt, you look at her, and if you can still tell me you think that's a man's face, well, I mean, that's your prerogative. But I can tell you how many people I've taken, given this indigenous tradition, say, just look at the face. And people, I can't see how anybody cannot see it's not a woman's face. And it's a black African face, without a doubt. It's not a Caucasian male face, not by any degree. But it's not the original face. The original face was probably more like a lioness human face. We'll show you a little bit more of that later as another netter will come up. So she, Tefnut, was carved in 3 stages. First the head and the fore, pause, and this has been verified by the work of Robert Schoch and John Anthony West, who showed that the erosion at the front of the Sphinx is twice as much as the back. Then she was carved in the middle section, and then the tail. So she's carved over thousands and thousands of years. But the original carving, Hakim tells us, he just puts a figure, 54,000 years. And he tells us before it was even carved as a statue, this outcropping, which is called in geology a yardang, was sacred because of the energy there. He always tells us the energy of the site dictates what's there. Why we have pyramids, why we have the Sphinx, is that Giza, in my opinion, may be the #1 power place on our planet. She was just an outcropping of limestone. He said people used to come here 56,000 years ago just to energize themselves, just to meditate by her. So it's she. Here's her face. You can actually see some of the red and yellow paint that was her original paint. Originally it was yellow, then painted red, and it's since been, of course, eroded. But I was fortunate just a week and a half ago, it actually rained in Giza the whole day, which is unheard of. And I went to see her the next day. It's like she had a bath, like a shower. The colors were so vivid and bright, and unfortunately my camera didn't pick them up as well as I would like to. But you could really see the colors in her face now. And again, it's an African woman's face, without a doubt. Next. Here's close-up, where I showed the close-up. I did this last year, 2003, and you go on a tour with Angela, which we're leading a tour next October. She's leading another one in November, where you can actually go into the paws of the Sphinx now and get close to her, which I couldn't do until just 2003. It's a marvelous experience. So I took this picture to show that the jaw has been damaged. Why has the jaw been damaged? Because the Egyptologists tell you that they had a name for her, Har Ma'achet, Horus in the horizon. Well, it was an attempt to masculinize her. In the patriarchy, which I talk in great detail in my current book, How Patriarchy Arose, they put a false beard on her. And it's not there anymore, is it? She spit it out. She said, "What the hell are you trying to do to me?" It's in a corner in the Cairo Museum. I couldn't find it again. The Cairo Museum is a zoo. It's really hard to find things in the Cairo Museum. But it's stuffed in a little corner in the Cairo Museum, this little chintzy piece of limestone that is the beard. And you can obviously see it wasn't part of the original structure and not there today. Next. This shows the erosion. Again, I'm not going to go into great detail about this. This is John Anthony West, Robert Schoch. Schoch, a great geologist, 17-page resume. Andrea actually leads tours to Egypt with Robert Schoch, one in March. Incredible man. I've met him. Wonderful person. He's convinced without a doubt that this is water erosion. Not only water erosion, but caused by rainfall. Rain beating down for thousands of years. Next, we'll go into closer detail of that. Thousands of years, water. This, he says, is a textbook example of water erosion. Not wind and sand, as Zahi Was and Mark Lehner will tell you. Could not have been done in the last 4,500 years. It hasn't rained significantly in this area of the world. Like I said, it rained one day. That's probably all it's going to rain all year. 4 inches of rain a year at Giza. Hasn't rained significantly in 8,000 to 10,000 years here. So it has to be the Sphinx is older than that. Because these blocks were all quarried out of here to build the temples, the structures in front of the Sphinx today, which are erroneously called, mistranslated as Valley Temple or Sphinx Temple. So this area has to be older than 8,000 years. Next, we'll show you even more detail. As Robert Schoch tells us, this is all stratified. Again, limestone is what's called a sedimentary rock. It forms in layers, sedimentary layers, underneath the ocean for millions of years. So one layer is put upon another. It contains the bodies of marine animals. This is called nummulitic limestone. The animals are called nummelites, little sea creatures. You can find them embedded in there today. And it lays deposits. So sometimes there's a soft layer, a hard layer, a softer layer, a harder layer. And what Schoch has meticulously documented for us, it is the harder layers of this limestone that are more eroded, meaning only rainfall beating down at an angle for thousands of years could have caused this type of erosion. She has to be older than 10,000 years. And Schoch is not alone. When he gave a presentation at the American Society of Geologists in San Diego in 1995, I think it was, he had 250 geologists lined up after his presentation to verify, to stand with him, not caring what Egyptologists said, to document that he's absolutely right about this erosion. Next. And this is what Mark Lehner likes to point to. Oh no, this erosion was caused in prehistory because here we have a volcanic fissure that shows, or a seismic fissure that shows that this was an earthquake. This fissure has nothing to do with the erosion. It just shows the ignorance that these people try to portray as wisdom and intelligence. This fissure caused millions of years ago has nothing to do with this erosion.